Co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach Maurice Crum has spoken on the linebacker room, and you should all be excited for what he had to say.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is a Friday edition of Locked On SMU, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day as well, and appreciate all of you that have been everydayers throughout this first week of Locked On SMU. My name is Grayson Singleton. Coming up on today's show, I'm going to introduce you to a 2027 prize recruit prospect that if you haven't been introduced to him already, you might want to get busy. And also, we're going to talk about a poll from Sports Illustrated that I think highlights why it's so important that the Mustangs get back to the ACC championship game if they want to compete for a national title. Again, my name is Grayson Singleton. Today's episode, by the way, is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So head over there to Monarch Money. Okay, let's go ahead and get started because we're going to continue our series breaking down all of the position rooms. And luckily for us, Maurice Crum, the co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, sat down with Billy Embody to discuss the linebacker room. And I have some of the quotes here that he talked about with some of his players. Now, before I get to what Coach Crum had to say, let me say this about the linebacker room. Number one, you should be a lot more excited about this linebacker room than I think a lot of people nationally are. And I want to turn back to what we talked about a couple of days ago with Phil Steele's college football preview. Remember where Phil Steele had SMU's linebacker room ranked in terms of position amongst the ACC teams? There are 17 teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference. He had them ranked 13th at linebacker. 13th. Now, look, you're losing guys like a Kobe Wilson and an Ahmad Walker. Those are two of your leaders. We don't really know exactly what is going to replace it, so it kind of makes a little bit of sense. However, because we're doing this locally, I'm going to get you excited about this linebacker room with a couple of quotes. Now, by the way, I think there are dudes here that are remaining on the defense from last year that can assist in the transition from that group of linebackers to another. The number two thing for why you should be excited about this linebacker room, and this is probably the biggest takeaway of the show today, because one guy that they have coming up was there last year, and he was learning under Kobe and learning under Ahmad, and he's ready to take the mantle from them. Also behind them, by the way, this hasn't been talked about enough, including on our show, there is serious depth at linebacker. Now, some of it looks a little bit young, like a Michael Iheanacho, who's going to be a true freshman, like a Kyle Firm, who's going to be a true freshman, a guy that Coach Crum is really excited about, by the way. But they got dudes behind dudes. So even though you're going to lose some veteran leadership, and a good chunk of it, you've got dudes coming up that are ready to go. And by the way, the guy we're going to start off with, and the guy who is basically ascending the depth chart, who was with the program last year and the year before, Alex Kilgore, has been one of the guys that Coach Lashley and the staff elected to send with the team to Charlotte for ACC Media Day. I don't think that's a point that should be understated, because if coaches are sending you to Media Day, they view you as a guy who is totally capable of being an impactful leader on the team. They send leaders. Yes, you're going to send your biggest stars, obviously, because those are the dudes that the guys want to talk to, the media personnel, that is. But you're also going to send a dude, especially in Alex Kilgore's case, who is a little-known name nationwide, and certainly, and maybe even conference-wide as well. But if you view him as one of your leaders of your defense that was so excellent last year, that's why you send him. So let's start with Alex Kilgore for a second. This was Maurice Crum on Kilgore. He said, quote, he knew he was going to have to wait his turn, and he chose to stick it out knowing that time would come. He's been waiting and chomping at the bit to play big-time football. He's ready to show the world. He's ready to lead, and it wouldn't be surprised if he had a big-time year. a big time year for Alex Kilgore would pay huge dividends for a team like SMU. A dude who made his mark on special teams, a dude who's been learning the system along with Maurice Crum, who has been here since 2023, which basically puts his arrival right around when Alex Kilgore got here, if not 1 year earlier, and a guy that's ready to lead. Now, you could say, okay, well, what about Zakai Barker? Where does Zakai Barker fit into that? Where does the ready to lead part? Is Zakai Barker going to be that leader? Well, here's the thing Alex Kilgore and Zakai Barker have that's not the same. Alex Kilgore's been here. He knows the system. He's been there with Scott Simons, and he's been there with Maurice Crum, the two co-defensive coordinators. So, not to mention Crum's linebacker room. So there is a built-in seniority there. Now, here's the thing with Kilgore and Barker, too, because I think their play styles fit so nicely together. And they're both dudes that are Maurice Crum dudes. They're guys that Crum likes upstairs, and they're so smart and football intelligent. And when you go back to Coach Crum's interview with Billy Embody, you see him hearken a lot back to guys who are football intelligent, to use my own words. Their football IQ is very high. They know the game. They are football players. And Alex Kilgore certainly fits the mold. And one of the reasons that Maurice Crum, Scott Simons, Rhett Lashley, me, and you should be excited about Zakai Barker is the exact same. They're football players, their IQ is high, and they can play off of one another. So that's just a couple reasons why you should be pretty excited about this linebacker room. By the way, this is what he said on Zakai Barker. Kobe Wilson and Ahmad Walker are in love with football, and Zakai's the same way. There you go. Does that not go hand in hand, interlocking with an Alex Kilgore? A guy who has just been waiting and waiting and waiting to get his time, and then he gets it, and now he's finally ready to go. You know he's got to love football if he said, you know what, I'm just going to stick here, and I'm not going to transfer. I'm going to stay right here, and I'm going to wait my turn. Yeah, that would track with that. I think that if you put those two together, oh boy, I think you are really something as a tandem at linebacker. Will they be as good as Kobe and as good as Ahmad? I don't know. I don't know if they'll be as good as they were as a duo, but they got the opportunity, and I would bank on their fluidity together being similar to what we saw last year. Now, he goes on to say, this is another interesting thing. He says, I think we'll beat people with our depth. And there are dudes behind those two that I think will be very interesting. Kyle Firm being one of them. Now, Kyle Firm is a little bit behind the eight ball right now because he didn't get there for spring practice, so he's got a little bit of catching up to do. But a guy like Ian Achor, who's also a true freshman, part of the class from last year that was really, really exciting, that included Ty Hawkins and whatnot. Those are two guys behind those two that I think may not contribute immediately, but by the time we get to late October into November, I think they could be players. Because those dudes are football dudes as well. If you haven't watched their film, watch their film. They are football dudes. This is what Coach said on Kyle Firm. He's a really good athlete. I'm excited about Kyle. He's going to be a good player. And then also this one. This is on Justin Medlock, who also is rising from where he was on last year's depth chart. This is him on Justin Medlock. It's not even close as to who the most athletic guy in the room is. It was a matter of him just getting around and learning our way. Justin Medlock is in year 2 in the Mustangs system. Now, that's the dude that you should really watch in rotational snaps to see what kind of an impact he can make, because his athletic upside is through the roof. And I think he just got a year to understand him and his fit. And when you see a kid who is supremely talented as him get that year to get everything right in terms of the mentals, you put that puzzle piece together. That's a fun thing. So between Zakai Barker and Alex Kilgore, and then Justin Medlock, and then you've got the freshmen, Firm and Ian Achor, this is a fun linebacker room. They lost some, yes, but do I think it'll be the 13th best linebacker room in the ACC? Oh, hell no. And coming up next, we're going to tell you about somebody who later on down the line could add to that front seven and be a real monster. Stick with us. You ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it certainly can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you can also build wealth. You know, I'm one of those people that the amount of subscriptions that I have, whether it be Netflix, HBO Max, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and other subscriptions, I even forgot I started. Sometimes I'm the one that forgets to cancel those free trials. We've all been there. I know you have. That's where Monarch Money can come in and help you keep all of that straight. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year with Monarch Money. Welcome back to Locked On SMU. I'm Grayson Singleton, and since you have stuck with us this far, make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe to this channel. Feel free to share it with all of your friends as we continue to grow this brand new channel and the newest addition to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day here on Locked On SMU. By the way, you can find me on Twitter at Gray_Singleton2. That's it right there. Gray_Singleton2 on Twitter is where you can find me, and you can probably see where I give opinions on other things in the world of sports, not just SMU, not just Oklahoma, who I cover on a day-to-day basis in addition to the Mustangs. Okay, part of my job is covering recruiting, and there is a guy in the DFW area who is going to be a highly sought-after prospect who kind of likes SMU quite a lot. His name is Zane Rowe, and he is a class of 2027 edge rusher, and his recruitment has been one that is kind of hard to follow. So I want to take you back a couple of years because Zane Rowe was actually committed somewhere after his freshman year. He committed to Oklahoma during his freshman year. Now, he has since backed off that pledge, and for understandable reason, he committed way, way too fast. Now, he does love Oklahoma, yes, but he also loves SMU. And let me give you the background on Zane Rowe before we go any further. Zane Rowe is a 6'5", 256-pound from Denton Guyer. He is a consensus four-star across the industry. ESPN, Rivals on 3, 24/7 Sports. Everybody has him as a four-star. I think his composite grade on 3 Rivals is like 92. I would be surprised if by the time it's all said and done, he does not enter college as a 5-star. This kid is incredible. His 2027 class ranks. He is the 71st overall player, so not quite in 5-star territory yet. He is the 9th ranked edge, and he's the 12th best prospect overall in the state of Texas. So this is a blue chipper of the highest order that is going to be looking at SMU. And he loves him some SMU. Here's what he had to say. Quote, "It feels great to be back after he was back at SMU last month. This is my backyard. It's good to be home again. It's going to be great. It's been going great, especially since June 15th, since they can talk to the 2027 class. It's nothing but up from here, I guess." Now, here's where we get good. I think it speaks a lot of the culture, still quoting here, and the environment that they're trying to build here. Keep the Dallas, DFW, Texas guys here in Texas, and I think that speaks numbers when it comes to recruiting. You have heard me say this before. You have heard me say this on clips that have been on my social media. Some of you found them from a couple of months ago. SMU is hell-bent on building a fence around DFW, as well it should be. As well it should be, given the volume of talent that comes out of that spot. And Zane Rowe, if they're able to track him down and lock him down, that is a major, major victory. Maybe the climactic step maybe it is the end game of the building fences around DFW. Because you look at what they've done in DFW, and we talked about this on the first episode ever of this show. Aldra Miles from Kaufman, Texas. Drew Evers from Flower Mound, Texas. They beat out Oklahoma head-to-head for both of those. Ryan Gilbert from Forney, I believe. Papungatoa Katoa is also from the DFW area. Christian Rhodes, also from Dallas. They're saying the quiet part out loud. They want to keep the blue chippers in Dallas. And I don't need to tell you guys, I don't need to tell the Pony Express what's so fun about staying in Dallas, because Dallas is a hell of a place. It's my home. But if you can land a guy like Zane Rowe, like Aldra Miles, great get. Drew Evers, great get. I mean, hell, you beat out the reigning defending national champion Ohio State for Drew Evers, along with Oklahoma and Penn State. Those dudes are great. Papungatoa Katoa, awesome prospect. But Zane Rowe might be the crown jewel of it all in the 2027 class, if you can bring him in. Now, his recruitment's going to be a little interesting, okay? Because, yes, he's been back and forth to SMU. He's also been back and forth to Oklahoma a lot. He also has gone on visits to Georgia. He has gone on visits to Texas Tech, and Texas A&M. Now, before you squint your nose at Texas Tech, we all know what's going on over there with Cody Campbell funneling money in there. They're over here signing Felix Ojo, the number 1 tackle, or maybe the number 2 tackle in the 2026 class. And then it seems like they're going to get maybe the best tackle in the 2027 class in Cooper Hackett from Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. So they've got a lot of money to spend, and that's why they are such a prominent opponent here, is because of the money factor. But if you can make Zane Rowe love SMU, you've got a really good shot to get him, because as that last quote just said, it's kind of cool to be a part of maybe not the pilot episode, but the second episode of a program trying to keep all of its dudes right there. And that's a worthy task to take on by Rhett Lashley and his staff. But Zane Rowe is a stud, man. He's a two-way star right now, plays defensive end, also plays tight end. He will likely be better at defensive end in college, even though he does kind of want to do the two-way thing. I don't know really how I feel about it. Not great. But if he can settle at defensive end, he's going to be a problem, a real problem. And look, right now, don't take anything for anything yet, because he seems to just be on a world tour, taking visits everywhere. And by the way, I don't blame the kid for doing it, but he is out and about as if he's on a concert tour right now, or if he's like promoting a book. He likes to go everywhere, and so he should. But if you can keep that Denton Geyer prospect here at home in DFW, I think the mission is complete. And when I say I think the mission is complete, notice that that does not mean you should be satisfied, because obviously you have to recruit every single year. But I think the mission has been reached in this sense. People now know there is a fence around DFW for blue chippers that you will have to penetrate. I think it has started to come around this year with Aldra Miles and Drew Evers and Papungatoa Katoa and Ryan Gilbert and Christian Rhodes. But Zane Rowe is a higher prospect than them all. And if you can get him, now the sky's the limit for what you can do in DFW. One last thing before we go on to our last segment. I do want to make one clarification. So I've said that SMU hasn't signed a 4-star since back in 2022 with RJ Maryland. That I do need to clarify that is prior to this past year's 2025 class. So obviously, if you know, they signed 4 stars in 2025, highlighted by the quarterback Ty Hawkins out of IMG Academy. So just to make that clarification, prior to this past year's class, it had been since 2022 since they signed 1 4-star in a given class. I don't know the last time they signed multiple 4 stars. But as it stands right now, in the 2026 class, they've got 8 committed, and Zachary Turner, the 9th, could be on the horizon. Coming up next, we're going to go through what Sports Illustrated thinks about the ACC and what that says about SMU's chances to get back to the college football playoff. Stay here. One more segment here on Locked On SMU as we close up shop for the week. Again, my name is Grayson Singleton. Thank you for sticking with us. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel as well. Okay, so Louisville Cardinals on SI. A really interesting write-up, by the way. I like Louisville stuff on Sports Illustrated. Well, they had their preseason ACC power rankings. And I like to go through these things from other writers in the ACC because I find it interesting because we can tell you all we want about what I think about SMU. But I also like to zoom out and see what people who aren't intimately covering the program think about it. So this comes from Sports Illustrated and Matthew McGavick. Hope I pronounced that name right. Here's his power rankings for the ACC going into the 2025 season. Number 1, Clemson. Okay, no surprise there. Following a few down years, in quotes, by their lofty standards, it appears that Clemson is rounded back into national championship form. They are stacked to the gills with talent, highlighted by a plethora of elite homegrown guys like Cade Klubnik, the quarterback, defensive tackle Peter Woods, and cornerback Avion Terrell, who, if you remember, that's AJ Terrell's brother. They might have gone one and done the CFP, but Dabo Swinney's squad can easily contend for a title, much less the ACC. No qualm there with that one. I expect Clemson back in the ACC championship game. Number 2 is Miami, according to Matthew McGavick. As far as who will likely meet Clemson in Charlotte, Miami is the odds-on favorite. The Hurricanes nearly made the ACC championship game last season, going 9-0 before losing 3 of their final 4 games. They lose Cam Ward. Quarterback Carson Beck comes over from Georgia to guide an offense that, while it lost a lot, and yes, it did, it still has a great supporting cast. Number 3 is where we get to SMU. And here's what they have to say about the Mustangs. Despite being one last-ditch Clemson drive away from winning the ACC and got absolutely thumped at Penn State in the CFP, Clemson had a great first year in the conference and enters 2025 with hopes that they can do it again. Kevin Jennings may have been seeing ghosts in Happy Valley, and the Mustangs do lose some impact pieces on offense, but he's still one of the league's best quarterbacks, and Rhett Lashley is a masterful coach on that side of the ball. The biggest question in Dallas is how their defense, which was the best in the ACC last season, will fare after losing most of their starters. We talked about yesterday and the day before about the right starters coming back on defense. So I don't want to relitigate that conversation. But I do want to say this. If what Matthew McGavick is saying comes true, SMU will not make the college football playoff. If SMU wants to go back to the college football playoff, it is imperative that you make the ACC championship game. So you know all the sweeping changes going on in college football, a lot of new legislation, which I know we had the bill that was introduced to the House yesterday. I thought about doing a segment on that, but we're going to table that for now. That's going to be an evergreen topic. If you guys want, hit me up on Twitter, Gray_Singleton2, and I will do a segment on that if you guys want me to do that, because I do have some thoughts on it. But part of the changes of college football and the restructuring potentially of the college football playoff is that the Big Ten and the AC and the SEC want their guaranteed spots. Guaranteed. They want 4 teams each in the college football playoff. So if we expand to 16, that's half the spots gone. You can safely, under that metric and that structure, you could safely position 2 ACC teams in there, I believe. Now, there's going to be that group of 5 team, that group of 5 conference winner. That'll probably get in. Now, in a 12-team playoff, you're certainly not getting in if you're third in the ACC. In a 16-team, you might. But for this year, which is going to be a 12, you have to, at minimum, get to the ACC championship game, if not win it, to have a stone's throw to get into the CFP. Because the math just doesn't work out. And we all know that the weight is given to the Big Ten and to the SEC. If you play in those conferences, you're going to be given more leeway. Your wins are going to be weighed higher. the scale is going to be more impactful. That is not something you want to tempt in the ACC. Now, SMU got in last year. Could you say partly, and I think this helps strengthen the argument here, you could say partly because Alabama got thumped in Norman at the end of last year, which basically put the nail in the coffin for the Crimson Tide's college football playoff hopes. But without that, maybe an Alabama team whose season to that point wasn't that impressive to begin with. I mean, they had gotten outplayed by Vanderbilt earlier on that year. They probably would have gotten in over SMU because of the SEC and because of Alabama. So you don't want to play that game of leaving it in the hands of a committee to determine your postseason and national title fate. You want to make sure you get back to that ACC championship game so you can have the strongest resume possible. That's why I think it is absolutely a must for the Mustangs to be playing in Charlotte if they want to get back to the CFP and be one of those final 12 competing for a national title. Because I do not think that if they're third, especially in a 12 team, you might have a chance in the 16. In a 16-team playoff, you might. But in a 12 team, absolutely, positively not. You're not getting in as the third ACC team, especially if you're behind Clemson and Miami, unless those two just have otherworldly seasons and their great years strengthen your resume. I think that's your only shot if you're the third team in the ACC. But like we said a couple of days ago, right? SMU, with its schedule, especially its non-con, with a home game against Baylor and then being at TCU, and then the strength of the regular season schedule, they will have their chance to make a pivotal impact on the college football playoff committee. I believe that. And if they take care of their business, SMU will be just fine and end up in Charlotte. And that's what it's going to come down to. Do the Mustangs take care of their own business and get themselves back to Charlotte? And if they do, I feel good that they will be in the college football playoff once again. All right, that'll do it for this week's edition of Locked On SMU. A great first 5 shows. Thank you all for watching and supporting the show. Remember, like this video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to grow this Locked On SMU community. And for all of us here at Locked In, remember, we're brought to you today by Monarch Money. Thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen today, as always, go check out the portal with Brian Smith. He's got all the info on all the changes going on in college sports. And I would wager a bet one of those changes he'll talk about is what just went into introduction at the house. We will talk to you next week here on Locked On SMU. I'm Grayson Singleton. Take it easy. Have a good weekend, everybody.